They called it pride, the winter. They took the one thing that was mine. Long before the sun came up, I used to sit at the east window and hold it in my lap in the dark. I could not read a word of it in that light. I did not need to. My hands knew every worn corner, every place the leather had gone soft. It was my mother's, and after she was gone, it was the only warm thing left in the world that had been hers. And for a little while, it was mine. And I am going to tell you tonight how they took it from me, and what I learned about what a plain woman is truly allowed to keep. My name is Sadie, and I grew up plain, in a farmhouse where the rules were never written down, but everyone knew them anyway. If you have found your way to this quiet corner where an Amish woman tells you the truth about the life, then stay with me tonight, and subscribe if you would like to sit at this window with me again. And before I go on, I want to ask you something, and I want you to answer it in the comments if you can. In the world where you grew up, who decided what a woman was allowed to love? Think on it while I tell you my story. You have to understand something about the life to understand what happened to me. In the plain world, the danger is never the big sins. Everyone guards against those. The danger is attachment, loving a thing too much, wanting something to be yours in a world where nothing is supposed to be yours alone, where everything belongs to the family, the church, the good of all. They do not tell you this in words. They teach it to you slowly, by watching what gets taken away from the women who love the wrong things too openly. My mother's book was a hymn book, an old one, older than she had been, with her own mother's name in the front and then hers beneath it. But that is not why it was precious. It was precious because in the margins, in her small, careful hand, my mother had written things, not sermons, little things. The date a baby was born beside a hymn she must have been singing that morning. A single word, rain, beside another, and I will never know what she meant by it. My whole mother was in those margins. When she died, I did not weep at the grave. I wept later, alone, holding that book, because it was the last place her handwriting still lived. My husband that year was named Amos, and I want to be fair to him, because this is not a story about a cruel man. Amos was not cruel. Amos was afraid. There is a difference, and it took me most of my life to learn it. He saw me at that window every morning in the dark, holding a book I could not even read, and something in it frightened him. A wife who reached for one thing before she reached for her family. A wife with a private country he could not enter. It was the bishop's wife who said the word first. Pride. She saw me put the book in my apron pocket one Sunday, and she said gently, the way they always say the hardest things, that a woman who clung so to an object might be loving the gift more than the giver. That perhaps it had become an idol to me. And once that word is said in a plain community, it does not go away. It travels. By the next week, 3 women had asked me, kindly, with their heads tilted, whether I had made peace with letting go of worldly attachments. And Amos heard it too, in the way a man hears the whole community turn its eyes toward his house. Now I have to stop here, because I have brought you right up to the edge of the hardest part, and there is more of this story than I am able to fit into one evening at a window. I want to tell you the truth about something. There is a great deal about a plain woman's life that does not fit into a video, and some of it does not fit because it is simply too long, and some of it because it is too tender to say quickly. So I did what my own mother did in those margins. I wrote it down, slowly, over a long time, everything I have learned about being a wife in this life, keeping a home, holding on to your own soul when the world wants all of it. I put it in a little book, and I called it A Quiet and Faithful Home. It is written the way I am speaking to you right now, as if we were sitting at the same table. If you would like it, the small card is on your screen, and the link is waiting in the first comment below. But do not go yet, because I have not told you what Amos did, and I have not told you what I learned, and the learning is the part that matters. One evening in that winter, Amos came to me, and he held out his hand, and he did not have to say what for. I want you to understand what that moment was. It was not a fight. There was no shouting. In the plain world, the hardest things are done quietly, in a kitchen, with the children already asleep. He simply held out his hand, and the whole weight of the church and the community and God himself seemed to be standing behind him in that kitchen. And I was one young woman with a book that had my dead mother's handwriting in it. I gave it to him. I want to be honest with you about that. I did not resist. I had been raised to obey, and obedience goes deeper than choice. It goes into the body, so that your hands do a thing before your heart has agreed to it. I put my mother's hymn book into my husband's hand, and he took it out to the barn, and I do not to this day know exactly what he did with it, and I made myself not ask, because the not asking was easier than the answer. I thought that was the end of it. And in the smallest way, it was. Life did not stop. The cows still needed milking before light, and the bread still needed making, and the children still needed their mother, and a plain woman does not have the luxury of falling apart, because there is always a task with its hand out, waiting. So I went on. I got up at the east window in the mornings, the same as always, and I reached for the book that was no longer there, and my hands would close on nothing, and then I would go down and start the fire. That is the part no one warns you about. Not the taking, the after. The way a house can look exactly the same and be completely changed. Amos and I did not speak of it, not once, not ever again. We were kind to each other. We were courteous, the way you are courteous to a guest. But something had gone out of the room that we both pretended not to notice, the way you learn not to touch a sore tooth with your tongue. I told myself I had done right. I told myself obedience was its own comfort. And on the good days, I almost believed it. But let me tell you about my neighbor, Rebecca, because her story is the shadow of mine, and it taught me what I might have become if I had let that after go on forever. Rebecca had loved a thing too, years before. For her, it was not a book. It was her singing. Rebecca had a voice like water over stones, and she used to sing at her work, in the garden, at the wash, and the community decided a woman who sang for her own pleasure that way was calling attention to herself, so they asked her to stop. And Rebecca, who was more obedient than I ever was, stopped completely. Not just in public. She stopped altogether. She told me once, in a low voice so no one could hear, that she had not sung a note in 11 years, not even alone, not even to the Lord, because she was afraid that if she opened that door even a crack, she would not be able to close it again. She had not just given up singing. She had given up the part of herself that sang. And I looked at Rebecca, gone quiet and gray and careful, and I understood that a woman can obey her own soul right out of her body if she is not careful. I want you to sit with what Rebecca gave up, because it is easy to hear she stopped singing and think it a small thing. It was not a small thing. A woman's voice is not decoration. When Rebecca sang at the wash, she was telling the world that there was still something alive in her that the day had not used up. She was saying, without a single word, I am still here, I am still mine, some small corner of me has not yet been spent on all of you. And when they took her singing and she let it go all the way down to the root, she stopped saying that. She became only what she did for others, a pair of hands, a back that carried. And she smiled, and she was gentle, and she was, in a way I did not have the word for then, already half gone. I would visit her, and I would watch her move about her kitchen, silent, careful, folding herself smaller every year so as never to take up more room than the rules allowed, and a cold fear would come over me. Because I could feel that same folding beginning in myself. I could feel how easy it would be. You give them the book, then you give them the humming, then you give them the opinion you almost spoke at supper. And each thing you give is small, and each is called humility, and one day you wake an old woman, and there is no one left inside you to wake. That was when something in me, very quietly, refused. I could not get my mother's book back. But years later, an English woman I cleaned house for saw me one day tracing words in the air with my finger while I worked, the way I did without knowing it, and she asked what I was doing. And I told her, a little, about the margins, about my mother's hand. And she said a thing to me that I have never forgotten. She said, "They can take the book, Sadie. They cannot take what you memorized." And I sat down in that English kitchen and I wept, because she was right, and I had not known it. I had spent years mourning an object, and the whole time my mother's words, rain, the baby's date, the little marginal country of her, had been living inside me, where no bishop's wife and no frightened husband could ever hold out a hand for them. That is the thing they never tell you. They can take what is in your hands. What you have taken into your heart is yours until you die, and it is the one possession no plain rule was ever able to reach. So if you grew up in a world where loving one small thing of your own was called pride, I see you. If you gave something into an outstretched hand because your body obeyed before your heart could argue, I see you. And if you have spent years mourning a thing that was taken, not knowing that the truest part of it was never in the thing at all but in you, in what you carried, in what you memorized in the dark at an east-facing window, then tonight, more than any other night, I see you. I did not become Rebecca. I want you to hear that. I lost the book, and I kept the woman. And keeping the woman is the whole of what I have learned, and the whole of why I am still here at this window talking to you instead of gone silent and gray and careful like so many. Everything I have learned about how a plain woman keeps her own soul while she keeps her home, I set down in that little book, A Quiet and Faithful Home, for the nights you need a voice at your own table. The card is on your screen and the link is in the first comment. And whether you take the book or not, take this from me, from one woman to another, across whatever fence stands between your life and mine. Keep one small thing that is truly yours. Keep it in the place they cannot reach. It might be the very thing that saves your life. I will be at this window again soon. Come and sit with me.